Oh my god, my hair is just not bouncing and behaving today. I'm so sorry. You have to look at this for like 15 minutes now. I'm sorry. Hi everybody, it's Tanya, and today I would like to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is Wes Anderson films. Actually, before we begin, let me apologize for my accent. I am not a native English speaker, so that's the reason I sound the way I do. I also do have a lisp, you may have noticed by now. Anyway, let's jump into it. I've been a very big fan of Wes ever since I was a child. I remember when I was around 14 or 15 and Moonrise Kingdom had just come out, my dad showed it to me and I instantly fell in love. So I would go as far as to say that he is my favorite director, or at least one of my favorite movie directors. So as you can see, I'm a very, very big fan of him, but these last two films just feel like he's lost his charm. It feels as though he's on a losing streak, and I hate being a harsh critic, but I have such high expectations when it comes to Wes Anderson films, and I've been so deeply disappointed in these last two. Beware, from this point on, there may be some spoilers ahead. Not serious ones, but like, beware. So first I want to define what made Wes Anderson films so unique and recognizable and different from the rest. Many people would jump straight to the aesthetics and claim that his relationship with color and layout is what makes him special, which of course it does. The aesthetics are a big part of the way he expresses himself. But I want to talk about storytelling first and foremost. I think what made Wes Anderson films so charming up until now was the emotional connection you get to make with the characters. Most of his previous films included a pretty limited cast of characters, and it was immediately clear who you're supposed to follow. That made it easy to connect with characters. Even in films where he had a bigger cast, say the Royal Tenenbaums, you would still focus on a couple of main characters. I would say in the Royal Tenenbaums you mostly focus on Royal and Ethel, Richie and Margot. All that is to say, it was pretty clear who you're supposed to be paying attention to. There was a distinct difference between a main character and a secondary character. And that is one of the things where I feel like The French Dispatch and Asteroid City just fail. In Asteroid City, for example, technically I know that Jason Schwartzman's character is supposed to be the main character, but it seems as though everybody gets just as much screen time and just as much dialogue time as him. We don't really focus on a couple of specific characters, which prevents us from making a deep emotional connection with any of them. It feels like it just throws a bunch of people at your face, and you're supposed to just understand what each and every one of them is about when you get virtually nothing in terms of their personality, their ideas, their purpose in the film even, and it just falls flat in that regard. It's a shame because I could see the idea of Asteroid City being a nice film if it had a more limited cast, if it focused more on one or three people, like his previous films did. Now, in The French Dispatch, I get that the situation is a bit different because it's not a one-story film, it's three novellas. I think that format specifically doesn't play at all to Wes Anderson's advantage. Having three novellas completely erases the option of having a full-fledged story with a very long time to get to know the characters and really make an emotional connection with them, and thus find what they do funny. If you haven't yet gotten to know a character, you wouldn't necessarily find it funny when they say something that's supposed to be funny because you don't yet know how it relates to their character. So The French Dispatch having three novellas just was not a good idea. You couldn't make an emotional connection with the characters, and the humor kind of fell flat because of that. Now, the first novella with the homicidal artist, the incarcerated artist, I thought was actually pretty nice. It was funny and it was a very distinct character, and I think that's why it worked. Also, there wasn't a whole bunch of characters in that novella, which is what makes it so good in my opinion. The other two just didn't really grab my interest, and I think it's because I couldn't really make a connection with any of the characters. The second thing I would like to talk about is the humor, which Wes Anderson is known for this dry sense of humor, a very deadpan delivery of lines which makes them hilarious. Characters say these lines so seriously without realizing that what they're saying is very, very funny. It felt as though Asteroid City was trying to do it, but couldn't quite get it right. I mean, I can think of a few instances where Asteroid City made me laugh, but it wasn't the same sense of verbal humor that I had gotten used to. But even the physical humor, such as showing the nuke on the train, kind of feels dry in comparison to his previous films. For example, when Monsieur Gustave from the Grand Budapest Hotel finds out that he's being searched by the police, that they want to try him with murder, and he says, "She's been murdered, and you think I did it," and then immediately runs away, but like really slowly, and the policemen end up chasing him really slowly, and that is so funny. Now, in the French Dispatch is kind of less of a problem because there are funny moments, like in the novella about the students, where they all start crying during dinner, and they ask, "Why are we crying?" And someone answers, "Because we're sad." And then it turns out that it's just tear gas in the street from the protests, and that's funny. But a couple of funny moments don't save a film from being boring when you don't have an emotional connection with the characters. Something else that makes Wes's films unique is the feeling that everything you're seeing has been touched by the creator. As in, you can basically see the maker's fingerprints on the film. And it truly manifests in different ways. One of the most obvious ways to me is that Wes usually elects to use stop motion and miniatures, and it just feels so handmade compared to other films where more often than not CGI would have been used. Now, I must say that the alien scene in Asteroid City was absolutely adorable, and clearly they used a puppet and not CGI animation, and I found that lovely, absolutely charming, and I wish it had more of that feel to it. I mean, that's less of a problem in the French Dispatch, but I had to mention it anyway. Finally, I think what it all comes down to is that it just feels like the film is falling apart midway. I'll explain what I mean. Usually Wes Anderson films would work linearly. They would have a constant pace. You wouldn't feel like they're suddenly too slow or too fast. And these last two films just felt like they were very, very slow. And I think it really takes away from Wes Anderson's sense of humor, particularly, because usually those fast delivered lines and those really quick transitions are some of the charming things that made his films really funny. They made his humor shine through. And those two films, I feel, are completely missing that. I mean, I couldn't even think of an instance where it happened for a moment. It was all very, very slow. If anything, if we're looking at the French Dispatch, I would have liked to see an entire movie about the artist. I mean, that novella didn't feel as slow, and I think there was enough meat there to make it into a whole full-fledged film, and it would have worked so much better. Same thing goes for Asteroid City. If it was a bit more fast-paced and focused more on one specific character or a couple of characters, it would have worked so much better. Let's compare these two movies to something done right. Let's take a look at my favorite Wes Anderson film, The Darjeeling Limited. I think the reason it stands above the rest for me, and the reason it works so well, is that first of all, there are only 3 main characters, and it's mostly them throughout the entire movie. You don't have an overbearingly large cast of characters which you need to follow. So that's already one plus. I think you get to make such a deep emotional connection with the characters in part because of the length of a film and it following only 3 characters throughout the entire length. I mean, imagine if it was only the first 15 minutes of the film. It wouldn't really be as emotionally impactful, I don't think. An example of the humor used in The Darjeeling Limited, which was something I really missed in The French Dispatch and Asteroid City, is that part where they're fighting and they're telling each other, "Oh, you don't love me. Yes, I do." And then the third brother's like, "I love you too, but I'm gonna mace you in the face." That type of dry humor, it's really what makes his films so special, in my opinion. I mean, you can clearly see it was done with love. And I think that's what it comes down to. His last 2 films, to me, feel as though they weren't made with love. I know that may not be true, but it feels like it's more of a success-focused thing than it is something from the heart. It felt way too dense when it came to philosophical statements, and it didn't focus enough on making you fall in love with the characters and having you laugh your heart out. I mean, I will still keep going to theaters to watch every new Wes movie that comes out because I love him. He's still my favorite director. And I hope that someday maybe he goes back to his old style of making movies. I hope that he goes back to making movies for himself and no one else, not us in the audience. I just want him to do what he loves, things that feel more personal like the ones he did in the past. I'm doubtful as to whether I'll actually like any of his future films, but I will always give him another chance, because why not? Okay, everybody, that's just my 2 cents on this topic. If you want, you can leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Tell me why you loved these movies or why you didn't. And if you're interested, my channel is focused on books and films and storytelling in general. If you like that sort of thing, you're welcome to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching this video. Bye, everybody. Don't you play